When powerhouse CEO Chase Worth meets brilliant consultant Talia Reid, his world and his beliefs are shaken to the core. But as love collides with legacy, one secret threatens to destroy them both. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. The morning sun reflected off the glass towers of San Francisco as Chase Worth strode into the headquarters of Marsh & Worth. At 34, he was one of the most powerful men in the tech industry. His tailored suit fit perfectly against his tall frame, and his confident smile had graced the cover of Businessweek just last month. "Good morning, Mr. Worth," said his assistant, Linda, hurrying alongside him with a tablet in hand. "The marketing team is waiting in the main conference room. The consultant from Reid Strategy arrives in 15 minutes. Chase nodded without breaking stride. "Coffee? Black. Already on your desk, sir." The corner office offered a panoramic view of the bay. Chase took a moment to appreciate it before reviewing the file on his desk. Marsh & Worth needed a complete rebranding for their new global sustainability initiative. The board had insisted on bringing in an outside consultant. "Talia Reid," he murmured, scanning her credentials. "Harvard Business. Founded Reid Strategy 5 years ago. Impressive client list." A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Mr. Worth, the board members are asking if you'll join them before the meeting," Linda said. Chase followed her to the executive lounge where 3 older men in expensive suits were helping themselves to pastries. "Chase, my boy," his father, Harold Worth, clapped him on the shoulder. At 65, Harold still maintained an active role in the company he had founded. "Have you reviewed the Reid woman's portfolio?" "Just finished," Chase replied. "She seems qualified." Board member Richard Marsh snorted. "Qualified is one thing, but will she understand our vision? This sustainability initiative needs to appeal to our investors without scaring them off. We need someone who fits our image." "She's worked with Morgan Stanley and Google," Chase pointed out. "I think she understands corporate image." "Yes, but—" Harold exchanged glances with Richard. "She's not exactly conventional." Chase raised an eyebrow. "Meaning?" "She's very ethnic," Richard said, lowering his voice. "I just wonder if she's the right fit for Marsh & Worth. We have a certain clientele, a certain image to maintain." Chase remembered a conversation from years ago at a private dinner party with these same men, the champagne flowing, the casual remarks about image and marriage prospects, his own voice saying he'd never marry a black woman. Not because of race, he'd insisted, but because of image. He'd believed it then. It had seemed like a practical business decision, like choosing the right tie for a meeting. "The board meeting starts in 5 minutes, Linda announced from the doorway. "We're coming," Chase said, grateful for the interruption. He turned to his father and Richard. "Let's keep an open mind. Her results speak for themselves." The main conference room was filling up when Chase arrived. He took his place at the head of the table, scanning the faces around him. Then the door opened, and Chase forgot how to breathe. Talia Reid entered the room with effortless confidence. Her dark skin glowed against the crisp white of her blouse, and her eyes, intelligent, observant, took in everyone at the table before settling on Chase. She didn't smile the eager-to-please smile he was accustomed to seeing from consultants. "Ms. Reid," he said, rising from his chair and extending his hand. "Welcome to Marsh & Worth." She took his hand firmly. "I've heard of you." "Good things, I hope," he replied automatically. "Irrelevant things. I make my own opinions." For the first time in years, Chase Worth was momentarily speechless. He gestured to an empty chair. "Please, join us." The meeting proceeded as Talia presented her initial assessment of the company's current brand positioning. Her voice was clear and confident, her analysis sharp. "Your current market perception is strong but narrow," she explained, displaying slides on the projector. "Powerful, yes. Innovative, yes. But also exclusive, inaccessible, and frankly out of touch with younger demographics." Harold Worth frowned. "We've built our reputation on exclusivity, and that's worked well so far," Talia acknowledged. "But this sustainability initiative requires a different approach. You need to be seen as part of the global community, not above it." "Ms. Reid," Richard Marsh leaned forward, "our investors expect a certain standard from us." "Your investors expect returns," Talia corrected him. "And in today's market, companies perceived as elitist and out of touch are losing ground." She flipped to a new slide showing competitor analysis. "These numbers don't lie, gentlemen." Chase watched her handle the room with quiet authority. No unnecessary smiles, no flirtation, just pure competence. It was refreshing. "I'd like to conduct individual interviews with key team members," Talia continued. "Starting with you, Mr. Worth." She looked directly at Chase. If you can spare an hour this afternoon. My schedule is yours, Chase replied, ignoring his father's pointed look. After the meeting, Chase returned to his office, unable to focus on his usual tasks. There was something about Talia Reid that had thrown him off balance. It wasn't just her beauty, though she was undeniably beautiful. It was her directness, her refusal to be impressed by him. At precisely 2 o'clock, Linda showed Talia into his office. "Thank you for making time," Talia said, setting up her recorder on the desk between them. "These interviews help me understand the company culture beyond what shows up in market research." "Ask me anything," Chase replied, leaning back in his chair. "Why does Marsh & Worth suddenly care about sustainability?" Her question was blunt. Chase considered a diplomatic answer, then decided against it. "Because our investors care, because our competitors are doing it, and because personally I believe it's the right direction for the future." Talia nodded, making a note. "At least you're honest about the first 2 reasons." She looked up at him. "What's the company's greatest weakness?" "Adaptability," Chase admitted. "We built our success on a certain model, and change doesn't come easily to the old guard." "Including your father?" "Including my father." The interview continued for nearly 2 hours, going well beyond the scheduled time. Chase found himself revealing more about the company's internal politics than he'd intended. There was something about Talia that made him want to be honest, to impress her, not with his power, but with his insight. "Last question," Talia said finally. "What do you personally hope to achieve with this rebranding?" Chase paused, considering. "Legacy, I suppose. Marsh & Worth has always been about making money. I'd like it to be about making a difference too." Talia studied him for a moment, then turned off her recorder. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Worth." "Chase," he corrected, "and thank you for your directness. It's rare in this building." She smiled for the first time, a small, reserved smile that transformed her face. "I find it saves time." Over the next 3 weeks, Talia became a regular presence at Marsh & Worth. She conducted interviews, held focus groups, and spent hours in the marketing department. Chase found reasons to attend meetings he would normally delegate, just to observe her work. "She's certainly thorough," Harold remarked one evening as he and Chase shared a scotch in Chase's office. "But I'm still not convinced she understands our brand." Richard and I were thinking, perhaps his daughter Jennifer could join the project. She just finished her MBA at Stanford. Chase set down his glass. "Jennifer has no marketing experience." "No, but she understands our world, our values." "Dad, we hired Reid Strategy because they're the best. Let's let them do their job." Harold studied his son. "You seem quite taken with Ms. Reid." "I respect her work," Chase replied carefully. "Just be careful, son. Personal feelings have no place in business decisions." Harold finished his scotch. "And remember what we've discussed about public perception. Your relationship choices reflect on the company." After his father left, Chase stood by the window watching the city lights. He thought about the man he'd been just a month ago, confident, calculating, never questioning the values he'd inherited. Now he found himself uncomfortable with those same values, seeing them through Talia's eyes. The following Monday, Talia presented her initial branding concepts to the executive team. Her presentation was polished, her ideas innovative while respecting the company's history. Chase watched the room respond to her, skepticism gradually giving way to interest, even excitement. Only Richard Marsh remained visibly displeased. "This approach seems to prioritize social appeal over business interests," he objected. "Our primary responsibility is to our shareholders." "Your shareholders live in the same world as your customers," Talia responded evenly. "The data shows companies leading in sustainability outperform market averages by 11% over 5 years. This isn't charity, Mr. Marsh. It's strategy." "Well argued," Chase said, stepping in. "I think Ms. Reid's approach strikes the right balance. Let's move forward with concept testing." After the meeting, Chase caught up with Talia in the hallway. "That went well. Even my father seemed impressed, and he's not easily impressed." "Thank you for your support in there," Talia replied. "Not every executive is willing to champion change." "Would you join me for dinner tonight?" The invitation surprised even Chase himself. "To discuss next steps," he added quickly. Talia hesitated. "I make it a policy not to socialize with clients." "A working dinner, then?" "At the office, if you prefer." She considered for a moment. "There's a cafe near my office in Oakland. 7 o'clock?" Chase rarely ventured to Oakland, but he found himself agreeing immediately. The cafe was nothing like the sleek restaurants Chase usually frequented. Small tables filled with diverse patrons, local art on the walls, and delicious aromas from the open kitchen. "This is one of my favorite places," Talia said as they settled at a corner table. "Woman-owned, locally sourced ingredients, and they employ formerly incarcerated people as part of a rehabilitation program. I can see why it appeals to you," Chase replied, taking in the warm atmosphere. "You believe in businesses that do more than just make money." "I believe in authenticity," Talia corrected him. "This place succeeds because its values are genuine, not a marketing ploy." Throughout dinner, their conversation ranged from business to personal histories. Chase learned that Talia had been raised by her aunt after losing her parents in a car accident when she was 12. He found himself sharing stories about growing up as Harold Worth's son, the pressure and privilege that shaped him. "It sounds lonely," Talia observed after he described his boarding school years. "Success at any cost." "It was the only path I ever considered," Chase admitted. "Until recently." "What changed?" Chase looked at her directly. "I met someone who made me question my assumptions." The moment was interrupted by a commotion at a nearby table. An older woman had knocked over a water glass, and the server was quickly helping clean up. "Aunt Dolores?" Talia stood up in surprise. "What are you doing here?" The woman looked up, her eyes widening at the sight of Talia with Chase. "I'm having dinner with Marjorie," she said, gesturing to her companion. "I didn't expect to see you here tonight." "This is a work meeting," Talia explained, suddenly seeming uncomfortable. "Chase Worth, this is my aunt, Dolores Reed." Chase stood and extended his hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Reed. Your niece speaks very highly of you." Dolores took his hand with a firm grip, her eyes assessing him coolly. "Mr. Worth, I've read about you in the business section." "All good things, I hope," Chase said with a smile. "Irrelevant things," Dolores replied, echoing Talia's words from their first meeting. "I make my own opinions." Chase couldn't help but laugh. "I see where your niece gets her directness." "Among other things," Dolores said. She turned to Talia. "Call me tomorrow, dear." As they walked back to their table, Chase noticed Talia's discomfort. "Your aunt seems formidable." "She's protective," Talia replied. "She raised me to be cautious about powerful men with charming smiles." "Is that how you see me? A powerful man with a charming smile? Isn't that how you see yourself?" The question struck Chase silent. It was exactly how he'd always seen himself, confident, in control, above the fray of ordinary concerns. They finished dinner with the conversation turned back to safer topics of work and the rebranding project. When they parted outside the cafe, Chase felt reluctant to end the evening. "Thank you for dinner," he said, "and for the conversation." "Good night, Mr. Worth," Talia replied formally. "Chase," he corrected her again. She smiled slightly. "Good night, Chase." The next morning, Chase arrived at the office earlier than usual, his mind still on the previous evening's dinner. He was surprised to find Linda already at her desk, looking troubled. "What's wrong?" he asked. "You should see this," she said, handing him her tablet. On the screen was a business gossip blog with the headline, "Worth the Risk? CEO Chase Worth Spotted with Diversity Hire." Below was a grainy photo of him and Talia at the cafe, clearly taken without their knowledge. The article implied that Talia had been hired as part of a diversity initiative rather than for her qualifications, and suggested that their dinner was more than professional. Chase felt a cold anger building. "Find out who's responsible for this, and get our legal team on it immediately." Before Linda could respond, Harold Worth burst into the office, waving a printout of the same article. "What the hell is this, Chase? A public dinner with the consultant? Have you lost your mind?" "It was a working dinner," Chase replied, keeping his voice level. "That's not how it looks. Richard is furious. The board is concerned." Harold threw the paper on the desk. "We have the Singapore investors visiting next week. This is exactly the kind of distraction we don't need." "The article is garbage," Chase said, "and I'll handle it." Harold lowered his voice. "Son, I know you. I've seen how you look at her. But remember what you've always said yourself, image matters in our position. There are expectations." "Maybe those expectations need to change," Chase replied quietly. His father stared at him. "Don't throw away everything we've built for a momentary infatuation. There are plenty of suitable women you could date without creating headlines." The conversation was interrupted by Linda on the intercom. "Sir, Ms. Reed is on line 1. She says it's urgent." Chase picked up the phone. "Talia, I was about to call you. I've seen the article." "Then you should also see the follow-up that just posted," Talia said, her voice tight. "Someone leaked an old recording from a dinner party 3 years ago." Chase felt his stomach drop. "What recording?" "You discussing who you would or wouldn't marry, based on race." Her voice was perfectly controlled. I'm calling to let you know I'll be assigning another consultant to finish the Marsh and Worth project. Talia, wait. Goodbye, Mr. Worth. The line went dead. Chase stood frozen, the phone still in his hand, as the full impact of her words hit him. The recording, his casual dismissal of black women as potential partners, words spoken in what he thought was a private setting, now public, and Talia had heard them. Harold was watching him closely. What's happened? Chase set down the phone. I need to fix something important. The Singapore investors will have to wait. Chase grabbed his jacket. Some things are more important than business, Dad. As he headed for the door, Harold called after him. Chase, don't throw everything away for this woman. Chase paused in the doorway. Her name is Talia Reid, and she's worth more than everything. With that he left, not knowing if he could undo the damage, but certain that he had to try. Chase drove through the San Francisco traffic, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The recording that had surfaced was from a private dinner 3 years ago. He remembered the night clearly. Expensive wine flowing, cigars being passed around, men who controlled billions of dollars laughing easily among themselves, and his own voice, smooth and certain. I'd never marry a black woman. It's not about race. It's about image. It just wouldn't make sense. For me. He hadn't thought twice about it at the time. No one at the table had objected. There were knowing nods, a few smirks. It was just business talk among powerful men. Now those words made him sick to his stomach. He pulled up outside the modern office building that housed Reid Strategy. The receptionist eyed him warily as he approached. I need to see Talia Reid, he said. Ms. Reid isn't available, she replied, her tone cool. Would you like to make an appointment? Please tell her Chase Worth is here. It's important. The receptionist made a call, speaking too quietly for Chase to hear. After a moment, she hung up. I'm sorry, Mr. Worth, Ms. Reid is in meetings all day. Chase pulled out a business card and wrote on the back, Please give her this. Tell her I'll wait as long as it takes. He sat in the lobby for 3 hours. Employees came and went, giving him curious glances. His phone buzzed constantly with messages from his father and the board, but he ignored them all. Finally, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair appeared in the lobby. Chase recognized her immediately from the cafe. Talia's aunt, Dolores Reid. Mr. Worth, she said, her voice firm, my niece doesn't wish to speak with you. Chase stood. Ms. Reid, I understand her anger. I just need 5 minutes to apologize in person. Apologize for what exactly? Dolores crossed her arms. For saying you'd never marry a black woman, or for getting caught saying it? For believing it was acceptable to think that way? Chase replied honestly. For not seeing how wrong I was until now. Dolores studied him for a long moment. Talia isn't angry, Mr. Worth. She's disappointed. And in my experience, disappointment cuts deeper than anger. I need to make this right. Some things can't be fixed with a 5-minute apology, Dolores said. Some wounds need time to heal. She handed him a business card. Marcus Wilson will be taking over your account. He's excellent at what he does. I don't want another consultant, Chase insisted. The company needs Talia's vision, and Talia needs space from men who discuss her value based on her skin color. Dolores's eyes were hard. If a man won't stand beside you in a storm, he'll never keep you safe in the sun. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Chase standing alone in the lobby. Back at his apartment that evening, Chase poured himself a scotch and stared out at the city lights. His phone showed 27 missed calls, most from his father, several from board members, and 2 from Richard Marsh. A text message came through from Linda. Emergency board meeting called for 8 a.m. tomorrow. Your father is furious. Chase tossed the phone aside. For the first time in his career, the company wasn't his primary concern. All he could think about was the hurt he'd caused Talia, a woman who had done nothing but excel at her job. He picked up his phone again and dialed his closest friend, James Taylor, a fellow CEO who ran a smaller tech company. Chase, James answered, I've been trying to reach you all day. That recording is all over the business blogs. I know, Chase replied. I messed up, James. Not just with what I said then, but with how I've been thinking my entire life. It was a private conversation, James said. Everyone says things they don't mean sometimes. That's just it, Chase admitted. I did mean it. I never questioned those attitudes because they were comfortable. They were what I grew up with. There was a pause on the line. This is about more than damage control, isn't it? It's about the consultant, Talia Reid. She made me see things differently, Chase said quietly, and now I can't unsee them. Chase, you've got Singapore investors flying in next week. Your father is gathering support on the board. You need to focus on saving your job right now, not chasing after some woman. She's not some woman. Chase replied sharply. "And maybe I need to figure out if my job is worth saving." He hung up, his mind made up. Opening his laptop, he began to type an email to the entire Marsh & Worth executive team. In Oakland, Talia sat in her kitchen with a cup of tea gone cold beside her. Her Aunt Dolores watched her with concern. "You should eat something," Dolores said gently. "You've barely touched food all day." "I'm not hungry," Talia replied, staring at her laptop screen where dozens of news alerts about Chase Worth and the leaked recording filled her inbox. "He waited for 3 hours," Dolores remarked. "Most men in his position wouldn't wait 3 minutes." "He's trying to save his company's reputation," Talia said. "This scandal could cost them millions." "Perhaps," Dolores conceded, "or perhaps there's more to it." Talia looked up at her aunt. "You raised me to be careful about men like Chase Worth, powerful men who think the world revolves around them. I raised you to judge people by their actions, not their reputations," Dolores corrected her. "Yes, I warned you about powerful men, but I also taught you that people can change when they're faced with their own mistakes." "He didn't say those things to hurt me personally," Talia said quietly. "He said them because women like me were invisible to him." "And now?" Dolores asked. Before Talia could answer, her phone rang. It was Marcus Wilson, her colleague who had taken over the Marsh & Worth account. "Talia, you need to see this," Marcus said without preamble. "Worth just sent an email to his entire executive team. He copied me on it. But I think it was meant for you to see too." "What does it say?" Talia asked, her heart beating faster. "It's an apology, a real one. And he's announcing a company-wide diversity initiative with teeth, board positions, executive recruitment, investment in underrepresented founders. He's putting $20 million behind it." Talia was stunned. "That's significant." "It gets better," Marcus continued. "He's calling out the tech industry's history of exclusion and acknowledging his own past failures. He's taking full responsibility for the recorded comments. No PR spin, no excuses." After hanging up, Talia sat in silence for a long moment. Dolores waited patiently. $20 million is a lot of money," Talia finally said. "For a man like Chase Worth, money is easy," Dolores replied. "Admitting he was wrong? That's the real measure." The next morning, Chase walked into the Marsh & Worth boardroom to find every seat filled. His father sat at the far end, his expression thunderous. Richard Marsh and the other board members lined both sides of the table, their faces varying from concern to open hostility. "Thank you all for coming," Chase said calmly, taking his place at the head of the table. "This isn't a regular meeting, Chase," Harold Worth said, his voice tight with anger. "This is an emergency session called to address your recent actions, which have put this company's reputation and financial stability at risk." "I'm aware of why we're here," Chase replied. Richard Marsh leaned forward. "That email you sent last night was completely unauthorized. $20 million committed without board approval. A diversity initiative that will fundamentally change our hiring practices. And that statement to the press, it's like you're trying to sink the company." "The company will survive," Chase said. "In fact, if you'd bothered to check the markets this morning, our stock is up 2 points. "That's temporary," Harold insisted. "The Singapore investors are threatening to pull out. They're concerned about stability." "Let them," Chase said, surprising everyone at the table. "If they don't share our values, we don't need their money." Harold slammed his hand on the table. "This isn't about values, it's about business. You've let personal feelings cloud your judgment, all because of that Reed woman." "Her name is Talia," Chase said quietly. "And yes, she helped me see things differently. But this isn't about her. It's about who we want to be as a company." "The board has prepared a statement," Richard said, sliding a document across the table. "It distances the company from your personal views and announces that you're taking a leave of absence while we assess the situation." Chase didn't even glance at the paper. "I'm not signing that." "Then we'll have to call a vote," Harold threatened. "I've spoken with the major shareholders. They'll back us on this, Chase. Don't force our hand." Chase looked around the table at the men he'd worked with for years, men who had shaped his thinking, his values, his view of the world. For the first time, he saw them clearly, not as mentors, but as relics of a dying era. "Before you vote, let me be clear," Chase said. "If I go, the Worth name goes with me. I'll start fresh with a new company built on real values, not just profit margins. And I'll take our top talent with me." A tense silence fell over the room. Chase stood up. "I'm calling a company-wide meeting in 1 hour. I suggest you all be there." He walked out, leaving the board in stunned silence. In the elevator, Chase checked his phone and saw a new email from an address he didn't recognize. Opening it, he found a single line. The cafe, 7 p.m. DT. His heart raced as he replied simply, "I'll be there." At precisely 7 that evening, Chase entered the small cafe in Oakland. It was quieter than during his previous visit, with only a few tables occupied. Talia sat in the back corner, a mug of tea in front of her. "Thank you for meeting me," Chase said as he took the seat across from her. "I read your email," Talia replied, "and I saw the press conference." The company-wide meeting had turned into an impromptu press conference when reporters got wind of it. Chase had stood before hundreds of employees and dozens of cameras, acknowledging his past failings and announcing the new direction for Marsh & Worth. "Did you mean what you said?" Talia asked. "About recognizing your privilege and working to change the culture?" "Every word," Chase confirmed, "though I probably wouldn't have seen the need for change if I hadn't met you." Talia studied him carefully. "You didn't say it to hurt me or women like me. You said it because we were invisible to you." "You're right," Chase admitted. "I never thought about the impact of those casual comments. I never had to. That's what privilege really means, not having to think about these things. And now I can't stop thinking about them," Chase said. "Or about you." Talia looked down at her tea. "I can't come back to the Marsh & Worth project." "I understand," Chase said, hiding his disappointment. "Marcus is doing a fine job." "It's not that I don't believe you're trying to change," Talia explained, "but there would always be whispers. People would say I got the job because of whatever this is between us." "And what is this between us?" Chase asked softly. Before Talia could answer, the cafe door burst open and Harold Worth stormed in, his face red with anger. He spotted them immediately and marched to their table. "Is this what you threw away your future for?" he demanded, glaring at Chase. "Secret meetings with her?" "Dad, this isn't the place. You embarrassed me in front of the entire board," Harold continued, his voice rising. "You threw away the Singapore deal. You committed millions to a pointless initiative. All because of what? Guilt? Attraction? She's not worth it, Chase." Talia stood up. "Mr. Worth, I understand you're upset, but—" "You don't understand anything," Harold snapped. "You come into our company, turn my son's head with your pretty face, and suddenly he's throwing away everything we've built." Chase rose to his feet, his voice deadly calm. "That's enough, Dad." "No, it's not enough." Harold was practically shouting now, drawing stares from other patrons. "I built Marsh & Worth from nothing. Everything you have, you owe to me. And this is how you repay me, by chasing after someone who doesn't fit our image?" "What image would that be exactly?" Talia asked coolly. Harold glared at her. "You know exactly what I mean." "Say it," Chase challenged his father. "Say what you really mean, Dad. Stop hiding behind words like image and fit." The cafe had gone completely silent, everyone watching the confrontation. Harold lowered his voice to a harsh whisper. "You know the world we operate in, Chase. Certain choices make things more difficult. I'm trying to protect you." "I don't need your protection," Chase replied. "And I don't want to operate in a world where someone's skin color determines their value." "Then you're a fool," Harold said bitterly. "And you'll lose everything." "No, Dad. For the first time, I'm seeing what really matters." Chase turned to Talia. "I'm sorry about this. It's not your fault," she said softly. Harold looked between them, his expression hardening. "You have a choice to make, son. Your family legacy or this?" "I already made my choice," Chase replied. "I choose to be someone I can be proud of." Harold's face flushed darker. "Then you're no longer welcome at Marsh & Worth. The board will hear about this." He turned and stormed out of the cafe. Chase sank back into his chair, the weight of the confrontation settling on his shoulders. "I'm sorry you had to witness that. Are you okay?" Talia asked, genuine concern in her voice. "Honestly, I don't know," Chase admitted. "I might have just lost my company, but strangely I feel lighter." "What will you do now?" "Start over, I guess. Build something better." Chase looked at her intently. "But right now, I care more about whether there's a chance for us than I do about Marsh & Worth." Talia was silent for a long moment. "I didn't want to feel anything for you," she finally said, "especially after hearing that recording, but—" "But?" Chase prompted gently. "But I respect what you did today, standing up to your father, risking everything for what you believe is right." She reached across the table and briefly touched his hand. "That takes courage." "Does that mean there's hope?" Chase asked. "It means I'm willing to see where this goes," Talia replied carefully. "Slowly." Chase smiled, feeling hope for the first time that day. "Slowly works for me." As they left the cafe together, neither noticed the man across the street taking photos with a telephoto lens or the satisfied smile on his face as he sent the images to Richard Marsh. The next morning, Chase woke to his phone ringing. It was James Taylor, his CEO friend. "Chase, turn on CNBC right now," James said urgently. Chase grabbed the remote and switched on the television. The business news channel was showing his photo alongside Talia's, with the headline, "Worth ousted. Romance costs CEO his company." "What the hell?" Chase muttered. "It's all over the news," James explained. "The board held an emergency session late last night. They voted to remove you as CEO, citing irreconcilable differences in vision. Your father is taking over as interim CEO." Chase felt numb. They can't do that without a shareholder vote. They're calling an emergency shareholder meeting next week to make it official. But Chase, it gets worse. There are photos of you and Talia leaving the cafe together. Richard Marsh is telling everyone you compromised the company by pursuing a relationship with a consultant. Chase ran a hand through his hair. That's ridiculous and completely hypocritical coming from Richard. "It's a power play," James said. "They're painting you as unstable, governed by emotion rather than business sense. They're using Talia to discredit you." "I need to warn her," Chase said, already reaching for his other phone. "They'll drag her name through the mud, too." "Be careful, Chase. They're watching your every move now." After hanging up, Chase called Talia, but the call went straight to voicemail. He tried again with the same result. Finally, he sent a text. "We need to talk. It's urgent. They're coming after both of us." Minutes later, his doorbell rang. Chase opened it to find Talia standing there, her expression grim. "I saw the news," she said, stepping inside. "My phone's been ringing non-stop with reporters asking for comments." "I'm so sorry," Chase said. "This is all my fault." "Stop," Talia said firmly. "You didn't do this. They did. Your father and Richard Marsh are trying to protect their old world kingdom." Chase paced across his living room. "They're going to destroy your reputation too. They'll say you manipulated me, that you used our relationship to influence company decisions." "Let them," Talia replied with quiet dignity. "I know the truth. My clients know the truth." "I didn't expect them to go this far," Chase admitted. "Using our friendship as a weapon." Talia stepped closer to him. "Is that what this is? A friendship?" Chase met her gaze. "You know it's more than that, at least for me." "For me too," Talia admitted softly, "which terrifies me." Chase reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. "What do we do now?" "We fight back," Talia said, determination in her eyes. Together, as they stood there, hands clasped, the morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating a path forward neither of them had expected. Across town, in the Marsh and Worth boardroom, Harold Worth and Richard Marsh reviewed the morning headlines with satisfaction. "He'll come crawling back once he realizes what he's lost," Harold said confidently. "My son has always understood power. He won't choose a woman over his legacy." Richard nodded. "And if he doesn't?" Harold's expression hardened. "Then we make sure neither of them has a reputation left to salvage." Little did they know, the battle they had just begun would change not only Chase and Talia's lives, but the future of Marsh and Worth itself. The morning headlines painted Chase Worth as a CEO who had lost his mind over a woman. Business channels debated whether his diversity initiative had been genuine or simply a way to impress Talia Reid. Social media buzzed with opinions, some supporting Chase's stand against the old guard, others questioning his judgment. "They're trying to make me look unstable," Chase said, scrolling through the news on his tablet. He and Talia sat in his apartment, coffee cups between them, planning their next move. "And they're painting you as some kind of manipulator." "I've been called worse," Talia replied with a wry smile. "The question is, what do we do now?" Chase set down the tablet. "I still own 20% of Marsh and Worth. My father holds 30, and Richard Marsh has 15. The rest is divided among smaller shareholders and board members." "So you need to convince the smaller shareholders to support you," Talia said. "Exactly. The shareholder meeting is in 1 week. If I can get enough support, I can block my father's move to officially remove me." Chase ran a hand through his hair. "But that's not enough. I need to show them a better vision for the company's future." Talia's phone buzzed with a text message. She checked it and frowned. "What is it?" Chase asked. "My Aunt Dolores. She says there are reporters outside her house asking about us." Talia looked up, concern in her eyes. "They're going after my family now." Chase felt a surge of anger. "This is my father's doing. He's trying to pressure us from all sides." He reached for Talia's hand. "I'm so sorry you're being dragged into this. I'm a big girl, Chase. I can handle it." Talia squeezed his hand. "But we need to be smart about this. Your father and Richard Marsh have resources and influence. They'll use everything they can against us." "Then we need allies," Chase said, picking up his phone. starting with the tech community. Over the next few days, Chase reached out to everyone he knew in the industry, fellow CEOs, investors, former colleagues. Some avoided him, not wanting to get involved in what the business press was calling the worth war, but others, particularly younger tech leaders and women executives, offered their support. Meanwhile, Talia used her own connections in marketing and PR to counter the narrative being pushed by Harold and the board. She arranged interviews with sympathetic journalists where Chase could tell his side of the story, how he had come to recognize his own biases and was committed to creating real change in the tech industry. 4 days before the shareholder meeting, Chase and Talia met with James Taylor at his office. "I've been talking to some of the smaller shareholders," James said, closing the door for privacy. "Many of them are on the fence. They don't like the negative publicity, but they're also impressed with the public support you've been getting from the progressive side of the tech world." "What about the Singapore investors?" Chase asked. "Still in play, surprisingly. They're pragmatic. They care more about returns than personal drama. But Harold is working them hard, promising stable leadership if they back him." Talia leaned forward. "What do our numbers look like?" James grimaced. "Not great. By my count, Harold and Richard have secured about 48% of the vote. Chase has maybe 35%. The rest are undecided. We need a game changer," Chase said. "Something that proves my vision for the company is better for business, not just morally right." "There might be a way," Talia said slowly. "The Global Innovation Summit is tomorrow. Every major tech player will be there, including potential investors. And my father," Chase added. "He's giving the keynote on behalf of Marsh & Worth." "Exactly," Talia nodded. "What if we announced a new venture there? A startup focused on sustainable tech led by you with backing from some of your new allies?" James looked skeptical. "You want to launch a competitor to Marsh & Worth? That will only convince shareholders you've turned against the company." "Not a competitor," Chase clarified, catching Talia's vision. "A partner, a separate entity that can work with Marsh & Worth but isn't bound by their old thinking. It gives shareholders a choice: back my father's outdated approach or embrace a future where both companies thrive together." "It's risky," James warned, "but it could work." The next day, the ballroom of the St. Regis Hotel was filled with the tech elite for the Global Innovation Summit. Harold Worth took the stage to enthusiastic applause, looking every bit the confident CEO. "Marsh & Worth has always been about innovation," he began, "about pushing boundaries and creating value. Recent distractions have not changed our fundamental commitment to excellence." In the back of the room, Chase stood with Talia and James, listening to his father rewrite history. Heads turned as people noticed him, whispers spreading through the crowd. "He's pretending nothing has changed," Talia murmured. "That's always been his strategy," Chase replied. "Deny problems exist, and they might go away." As Harold finished his speech to polite applause, the moderator opened the floor for questions. Chase moved to a microphone in the center aisle. "I have a question," he said clearly, causing a ripple of excitement through the audience. Reporters straightened in their seats, sensing drama. Harold's face tightened when he saw his son. "Chase, I wasn't aware you would be attending." "I wouldn't miss it," Chase replied. "My question is simple. How can Marsh & Worth claim to be innovative when its leadership refuses to innovate in its thinking about inclusion and representation?" A murmur spread through the crowd. Harold forced a smile. "This isn't the appropriate forum for personal grievances, Chase." "It's not personal. It's about the future of tech." Chase looked around the room. "Everyone here knows the industry has a diversity problem. I proposed a solution, and the board rejected it because it threatened their comfortable status quo." "The board rejected an unauthorized financial commitment made without proper analysis," Harold countered. "A decision made under questionable influences." The implication was clear, and Chase felt Talia stiffen beside him. Before he could respond, another voice spoke up from across the room. "I have a question for Mr. Worth Sr., Talia said, stepping to another microphone. "Is it Marsh & Worth's official position that considering diverse perspectives is a questionable influence on business decisions?" All eyes turned to her. Harold's smile became strained. "Ms. Reed, I presume. I was referring to the inappropriate mixing of personal relationships and business decisions." "Interesting," Talia replied calmly. "Because data shows companies with diverse leadership outperform their peers by 36%, is Marsh & Worth suggesting that profitability is less important than maintaining the current power structure?" The room erupted in a mix of applause and uncomfortable shifting. Harold was losing control of the narrative and everyone could see it. "Ladies and gentlemen," Chase said, taking advantage of the moment, "I came here today not just to challenge old thinking, but to offer a new path forward. I'm announcing the formation of Worth Innovations, a company dedicated to sustainable technology with diversity at its core." Reporters began frantically typing on their phones. Harold's face darkened with anger. "I'm joined by some of the brightest minds in tech," Chase continued, "who believe that true innovation comes from diverse perspectives. We've secured initial funding of $50 million from investors who share our vision." James stepped forward and handed Chase a tablet. On the screen was a list of prominent investors and tech leaders who had agreed to back the new venture. "This isn't about competing with Marsh & Worth," Chase explained. "It's about creating a partner that can help the company evolve. I'm still a major shareholder in Marsh & Worth, and I want it to succeed, but success in today's world requires change." The summit erupted into chaos as reporters shouted questions and attendees buzzed with excitement. Harold left the stage quickly, followed by Richard Marsh and other board members. In the lobby afterwards, Chase was surrounded by journalists and potential investors when he felt a hand on his arm. It was Talia, looking concerned. "Your father just left with Richard," she said quietly. "They looked furious." "I expected that," Chase replied. "But we've changed the conversation. Now it's about the future, not about us." "Chase Worth," a commanding voice cut through the crowd. Chase turned to see Vanessa Chen, CEO of Global Tech Ventures and one of the most powerful investors in Silicon Valley. "You've certainly made things interesting, Ms. Chen." Chase nodded respectfully. "Thank you for coming. I've been watching this drama unfold," Vanessa said, her shrewd eyes moving between Chase and Talia. "At first I thought it was just family squabbling, but now I'm intrigued." "By our business model?" Chase asked. "By your conviction," Vanessa corrected him. "It's rare to see someone in your position risk everything for principle." She handed him a business card. "Call my office tomorrow. I'd like to hear more about Worth Innovations." As Vanessa walked away, Talia squeezed Chase's arm. "That's a big deal. She controls billions in investment capital. And she's on the board of 3 companies that work with Marsh & Worth," Chase added. "If she's interested, others will follow." By evening, news of the confrontation at the summit and the announcement of Worth Innovations dominated business headlines. Chase and Talia retreated to her apartment in Oakland, away from the reporters camped outside his building. "You were amazing today," Chase said as they sat on her small balcony, the lights of San Francisco glittering across the bay. "The way you challenged my father's logic, I've never seen anyone handle him so effectively." Talia smiled. "I've spent my career helping companies find their authentic voice. Your father's voice is anything but authentic." Chase took her hand. "Thank you for standing with me through all this. Most people would have walked away from the drama." "I'm not most people," Talia replied, her voice soft. "And what you're doing matters. You're using your privilege to create real change." Their eyes met, and Chase felt something shift between them, a deepening of the connection that had been growing since that first meeting in the boardroom. Slowly, he leaned forward and kissed her. For a moment, the world outside fell away. The scandal, the company battle, the upcoming shareholder vote. There was only this quiet connection, this acknowledgement of feelings that had developed despite every reason they shouldn't. When they parted, Talia's eyes were bright with emotion. "This complicates things," she whispered. "Life is complicated," Chase replied. "But some things are worth it." The ringing of his phone broke the moment. Chase checked the screen and frowned. "It's James. I should take this." "Chase," James's voice was urgent. "Turn on CNBC right now." Chase went inside and switched on Talia's television. The business news channel was showing footage of Harold Worth at an impromptu press conference. "Regret to announce that my son, Chase Worth, is no longer affiliated with Marsh & Worth in any capacity," Harold was saying. "The board has voted unanimously to remove him from all positions within the company and to initiate legal proceedings regarding his breach of fiduciary duty." "They can't do this before the shareholder vote," Chase said in disbelief. "They're claiming emergency powers under some obscure bylaw," James explained. "It's questionable legally, but it creates facts on the ground. And there's more." On screen, Harold continued. "Furthermore, we have evidence that Mr. Worth's relationship with consultant Talia Reid began well before she was hired by Marsh & Worth, calling into question the legitimacy of her contract and all work performed." Talia, who had come in from the balcony, gasped. "That's a complete lie. They're trying to discredit both of you professionally," James said. "Harold is painting this as a conspiracy, that you two planned this from the beginning to damage the company." That's ridiculous, Chase said. We met for the first time in that boardroom. There are witnesses. They're claiming secret meetings before that, James replied. They don't need to prove it. Just create enough doubt to sway shareholders. Chase turned to Talia, whose face had gone pale. This affects your professional reputation too. Your other clients might start questioning your integrity. My work speaks for itself, Talia said firmly, though worry clouded her eyes. But this is a serious accusation. We need to respond immediately, Chase decided, already dialing his lawyer's number, and we need proof that we never met before that day. The next morning, Chase and Talia met with their legal team at James's office. The news was not encouraging. They've filed for an emergency injunction to prevent you from attending the shareholder meeting, explained Diane Wu, Chase's attorney. They're claiming you're acting against the company's interests. That's absurd, Chase protested. I'm a major shareholder. It's a delay tactic, Diane said. They know they probably won't win, but it ties us up in court until after the meeting. Talia's attorney, Marcus, looked equally concerned. They've also initiated an ethics complaint against Reed's strategy, claiming undisclosed conflicts of interest. It's baseless, but it will require a formal response. They're trying to drown us in legal battles, Talia realized, to distract us from the shareholder fight. Chase paced the room. What about the accusation that we knew each other before? How do we disprove that? It's difficult to prove a negative, Diane admitted. But we're gathering testimonies from people who were at your first meeting, and we're checking location data from your phones to show you were never in the same place before then. There's something else, James said, looking uncomfortable. Harold has been meeting with Jennifer Marsh, Richard's daughter. Jennifer, Chase frowned. What does she have to do with this? According to my sources, they're planning to announce her appointment as head of marketing at the shareholder meeting. And rumors are circulating that you and she were informally engaged before all this happened. Chase stared at him in disbelief. That's completely false. We went on 2 dates last year, that's all. There was never any engagement, formal or informal. They're creating a narrative, Talia said quietly. The dutiful son who was going to marry the right kind of woman and lead the family business, until he was led astray. By you, Chase finished, anger building in his chest. They're casting you as the villain who destroyed the perfect plan. It's an old story, Talia said with a sad smile. The black woman as temptress, disrupting the natural order. Chase took her hand firmly. We're not going to let them get away with this. As they left the meeting, Chase's phone rang with an unknown number. He answered cautiously. Mr. Worth? A woman's voice spoke. This is Amanda Davis from the San Francisco Chronicle. I'm working on a story about the situation at Marsh & Worth, and I've come across some information you might find interesting. What kind of information? Chase asked. Financial records showing unusual transactions between Richard Marsh and several offshore accounts, and emails between your father and Richard discussing ways to, quote, handle the Talia Reed situation before you ever hired her company. Chase's heart raced. That would mean that they were worried about her before she even came on board, the reporter confirmed. I'd like to meet with you and Ms. Reed. I think there's more to this story than what's being reported. After arranging a meeting with the reporter for that afternoon, Chase turned to Talia. If they were concerned about you before you were hired, that means they knew something about you, something that worried them. Talia thought for a moment, then her eyes widened. My research paper. 3 years ago, I published an academic paper on ethical failures in tech leadership. I used Marsh & Worth as one of my case studies. That must be it, Chase said. They knew you might ask uncomfortable questions. They were worried about you from the beginning, not because of me, but because of your work. When they met with Amanda Davis later that day, she confirmed their suspicion. I have emails from Richard Marsh to your father expressing concern about Ms. Reed's agenda based on her published criticisms of the company. They debated whether to block her firm from being considered for the rebranding project. But they didn't, Chase noted. Why? According to the emails, they thought it would look suspicious to reject the most qualified firm without cause. Instead, they planned to hire her but limit her access and influence. Which didn't work once Chase started taking my recommendations seriously, Talia added. Amanda nodded. There's more. I have financial records showing Richard Marsh paid someone to follow you both and take photos, and drafts of press releases about Chase's mental health leave dated before any of this became public. They planned this from the beginning, Chase realized. They saw me changing, listening to new perspectives, and they decided to push me out before I could change the company. I'd like to run this story, Amanda said. With your comments, of course. Do it, Chase decided. The shareholders need to know the truth before the meeting. As they left the newspaper office, Talia's phone rang. It was her Aunt Dolores. "Talia, there's someone here you need to speak with," Dolores said, her voice unusually urgent. "Jennifer Marsh, Richard's daughter," Talia asked in surprise. "Why is she at your house?" "She says she has information about Harold and her father, information that could help you and Chase." Talia looked at Chase questioningly. He nodded. "Let's hear what she has to say." When they arrived at Dolores's modest home in Berkeley, they found Jennifer Marsh sitting nervously in the living room. She was a slender woman in her late 20s, expensively dressed, but with a haunted look in her eyes. "Thank you for coming," she said, standing as they entered. "I know you have no reason to trust me." "Why are you here, Jennifer?" Chase asked directly. "Because my father and your father are going to destroy both of you," Jennifer replied. "And I can't be part of it anymore." She handed Chase a USB drive. "These are recordings of meetings between our fathers. They've been planning this for months. How to remove you if you didn't follow the path they laid out. The engagement story was part of it. I never agreed to it, but they didn't care." "Why are you doing this?" Talia asked. "You're risking your relationship with your father." Jennifer looked at her with tired eyes. "Because 3 years ago, I was at that dinner party. I heard what Chase said about never marrying a black woman, and I said nothing, did nothing. I've been silent too long while they use people like chess pieces." She turned to Chase. "I've watched you change, stand up for what's right. It made me realize I need to do the same." Chase squeezed Talia's hand as the pieces fell into place. With Jennifer's evidence and Amanda's story, they finally had what they needed to fight back. "The shareholder meeting is tomorrow," Chase said. "It's time to end this." That night, Talia and Chase sat with Dolores in her kitchen, preparing for the battle ahead. "Are you ready for this?" Dolores asked Chase. "Your father won't go down without a fight." "I know," Chase replied, "but for the first time in my life I'm fighting for something that matters more than money or power." Dolores studied him thoughtfully. "When you first came to my office looking for Talia, I thought you were just another powerful man trying to protect his image. I didn't believe people like you could really change." "And now?" Chase asked. "Now I think perhaps I was wrong." Dolores smiled slightly. "Though I'm still watching you," Talia laughed. "Always the protector, Aunt Dolores." "Someone has to be," Dolores replied. "But I will say this, Chase Worth. Standing up to your father, risking your position for what's right, that takes real courage." "I had a good example to follow," Chase said, looking at Talia. "Someone who never compromised her values for success." As midnight approached, Chase prepared to leave. Tomorrow would bring the final confrontation with his father and the board. Outside on the porch, he took Talia's hands in his. "Whatever happens tomorrow," he said softly, "I want you to know that meeting you changed my life. You made me see the world differently." "You changed yourself, Chase," Talia replied. "You chose to listen, to grow, to stand up for what's right." "I said never," Chase whispered, echoing his words from years ago. "But you made me believe in forever." Talia's eyes glistened with tears as she leaned in to kiss him. In that moment, regardless of what the next day might bring, they both knew some battles were already won. The morning of the shareholder meeting dawned bright and clear. Outside the Marsh & Worth headquarters, reporters gathered in anticipation of the showdown between Chase Worth and his father. Security guards checked credentials carefully, turning away anyone not on the approved list. In a hotel room 6 blocks away, Chase adjusted his tie while Talia watched from the sofa. "You're sure about this?" she asked. "Once we go public with everything, there's no turning back." Chase met her eyes in the mirror. "I'm sure. The truth needs to come out, for both our sakes." His phone buzzed with a text from James. "Amanda's story just went live. It's already trending." The San Francisco Chronicle had published Amanda Davis's explosive article that morning, revealing Harold and Richard's plot against Chase and their efforts to discredit Talia. The story included excerpts from the emails Jennifer had provided, showing the extent of their scheme. "Your father will be furious," Talia said. "This exposes him completely." "Good," Chase replied. "He's operated in the shadows for too long. It's time everyone saw him for who he really is." Diane Wu, Chase's attorney, arrived with the latest updates. "The judge denied their request for an injunction. You're legally entitled to attend the meeting as a major shareholder, and we've submitted all the evidence to the SEC regarding Richard Marsh's questionable financial transactions." "What about the shareholders?" Chase asked. "Has the article changed any minds?" "It's too early to say for certain," Diane admitted, "but James reports that several institutional investors have called with concerns about Harold's leadership. They don't like scandals or hidden agendas. Chase checked his watch. It's time. Let's go. The shareholder meeting was set to take place in the grand ballroom of the St. Francis Hotel. As Chase and Talia approached the entrance, reporters surged forward, shouting questions. Mr. Worth, did your father really try to force you out over diversity initiatives? Ms. Reed, how do you respond to allegations that you manipulated Chase Worth? Chase took Talia's arm protectively as they pushed through the crowd. Inside, the ballroom was arranged with rows of chairs facing a stage where the board members were already seated. Harold Worth sat at the center, his face a mask of controlled anger. Richard Marsh leaned toward him, whispering urgently. When Harold spotted Chase and Talia entering, his eyes narrowed. He gestured to a security guard who approached them immediately. "I'm sorry, sir," the guard said to Chase. "Ms. Reed is not on the approved attendee list." Before Chase could protest, James appeared beside them. "Ms. Reed is here as my guest," he said, showing his credentials as a shareholder. "I'm entitled to bring one guest, as stated in the bylaws." The guard hesitated, then stepped aside. Harold's expression darkened further as he watched Talia take a seat beside James in the third row. Chase continued forward to the reserved section for major shareholders. At precisely 10 o'clock, Harold called the meeting to order. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming today to this extraordinary meeting of Marsh & Worth shareholders. We face unprecedented challenges that require decisive action to protect the company's future." He briefly acknowledged the Chronicle article, dismissing it as a collection of misrepresentations and outright fabrications designed to damage the company's reputation. Then he moved quickly to the main agenda item. The board has unanimously recommended the removal of Chase Worth from all positions within the company and the appointment of myself as permanent CEO, with Richard Marsh as Chief Operating Officer. We believe this leadership team will provide the stability and vision needed to move forward. Harold looked directly at Chase. "Would you like to address the shareholders before we vote, son?" Chase stood and walked to the podium, feeling every eye in the room on him. He had prepared remarks, but as he looked out at the audience, at his father's smug confidence, at Talia's supportive gaze, he decided to speak from the heart. 3 years ago at a private dinner, I said something I'm deeply ashamed of now. I said I would never marry a black woman because it wouldn't fit my image. It was casual, thoughtless, and deeply wrong. I didn't see it then. I do now. A murmur went through the crowd. Harold shifted uncomfortably in his seat. When Talia Reed walked into our boardroom weeks ago, she changed everything for me. Not because I was attracted to her, though I was, but because she made me question beliefs I'd never examined. She challenged me to see the company, and myself, differently. Chase turned to face the board directly. The diversity initiative I proposed wasn't about political correctness. It was about making Marsh & Worth stronger by bringing in perspectives we desperately need. The research is clear. Diverse companies perform better. They innovate more effectively. They connect with broader markets. He held up his tablet, displaying financial projections. These numbers show what Marsh & Worth could achieve with a truly inclusive approach, not just morally right, profitable. Harold cut in. "This is all very touching, Chase, but the shareholders care about stability and proven leadership, not your personal journey." "Actually," a voice called from the audience, "we care about ethics and transparency too." It was Vanessa Chen, the powerful investor Chase had met at the summit. She stood commanding attention. "I've reviewed the evidence published this morning. If Harold Worth and Richard Marsh conspired to remove a CEO for promoting diversity and manipulated company resources for personal vendettas, that's not leadership I want to invest in." Several other shareholders nodded in agreement. Harold's confident expression faltered slightly. "The allegations in that article are unproven," Richard Marsh insisted. "Are they?" Chase asked. He signaled to James, who pressed a button on his laptop. The ballroom screens lit up with video footage, a recording from the dinner party 3 years ago where Chase had made his infamous comment. But the video continued beyond what Chase remembered, showing Harold and Richard later that evening discussing how to maintain the right image for the company. "We can't have any diversity hires at the executive level," Harold was saying clearly. "It dilutes the brand." "Agreed," Richard replied. "We'll make the right noises publicly, but keep things as they are." The room fell silent as the video ended. Chase turned to his father. "This wasn't just about me and Talia. This was about maintaining a system that keeps people like her out of power." Harold's face had gone pale. "Where did you get that recording?" Jennifer Marsh stood up from her seat near the back. I recorded it, Father. I've recorded a lot of things over the years. Richard Marsh looked at his daughter in shock. Jennifer, what are you doing? The right thing. Finally. She walked forward to join Chase at the podium. For years I've watched you and Harold manipulate people, block qualified candidates because they didn't fit your narrow vision. I'm done being silent. Harold tried to regain control of the meeting. This is all very dramatic, but it doesn't change the fact that Chase's behavior has been erratic and detrimental to the company. Has it? Chase challenged. Our stock rose 3 points after I announced the diversity initiative. Worth Innovations has secured $50 million in funding in less than a week. Talented people are lining up to work with us because they believe in our vision. He addressed the shareholders directly. You have a choice today. You can vote for the past, for exclusion masked as tradition, for narrow thinking disguised as stability, or you can vote for a future where Marsh and Worth leads the industry not just in profits, but in purpose. Vanessa Chen stood again. I move that we table the vote on Chase's removal and instead vote on a new resolution to remove Harold Worth and Richard Marsh from the board for ethical violations and breach of fiduciary duty. The chairman of the meeting, visibly uncomfortable, consulted with the company's legal counsel. Such a motion would require a 2/3 majority of shares represented today. Then let's vote, Vanessa said firmly. The next 30 minutes were tense as votes were collected and tallied. Chase sat beside Talia, who had joined him near the front. She squeezed his hand supportively. Whatever happens, she whispered, you did the right thing. Finally, the results were announced. The motion to remove Harold and Richard had passed with 68% of the vote. There was a moment of stunned silence, then a burst of applause from many of the younger shareholders. Harold Worth stood slowly, his face a mask of disbelief. This isn't over, he said to Chase, his voice low and threatening. You'll regret this betrayal. It's not betrayal to stand for what's right, Chase replied evenly. I learned that from Talia. As Harold and Richard left the stage, Vanessa Chen approached Chase. The board will need to elect a new chairman. I assume you're interested in the position? Chase looked at Talia, then back to Vanessa. Actually, I'd like to propose something different. Marsh and Worth needs new leadership, not just the next generation of the same families. I suggest we open the CEO position to outside candidates, with a commitment to considering diverse applicants. And you? Vanessa asked. I'll focus on Worth Innovations, Chase replied. But I'd like to propose a strategic partnership between the two companies, combining Marsh and Worth's resources with our fresh approach. The remaining board members huddled together, discussing this unexpected development. Finally, they agreed to Chase's proposal, establishing a transition committee to guide the company forward. As the meeting concluded, reporters swarmed around Chase and Talia, shouting questions about what had just happened. Chase declined to comment, leading Talia through a side exit to a waiting car. Are you sure about this? Talia asked as they drove away. You could have taken control of the company. It's your family legacy. Some legacies need to be broken, Chase replied. And I meant what I said. Marsh and Worth needs new blood, not just the same families controlling everything. And us? Talia asked quietly. What happens now? Chase took her hand. That depends on you. I know this all happened fast. I know there are 1,000 reasons why we shouldn't work. But I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Before she could respond, his phone rang. It was James. Turn on CNBC, James said urgently. Harold's giving a press conference. Chase switched on the car's built-in screen to see his father standing before a crowd of reporters. My son has been led astray by radical influences, Harold was saying bitterly. This coup was orchestrated by people with an agenda to dismantle traditional American business values. I will be taking legal action to reclaim control of the company my family built. Talia shook her head. He still doesn't get it. This isn't about politics or agendas. It's about human dignity. He never will get it, Chase said sadly. He can't see past his own privilege. 2 weeks later, the storm had begun to settle. Harold's legal challenges had been dismissed by the courts, and the transition at Marsh and Worth was proceeding smoothly. The board had appointed an interim CEO and established a search committee for permanent leadership. Worth Innovations had opened its offices in a renovated warehouse in Oakland, just blocks from Reed Strategy. Chase had assembled a team of talented young professionals from diverse backgrounds, focusing on sustainable technology solutions. He and Talia had maintained a low profile, avoiding public appearances together while the media frenzy died down, but they spoke daily, their relationship deepening despite the challenges they'd faced. One evening, Chase invited Talia to meet him on the rooftop of her apartment building. When she arrived, she found him alone, watching the sunset over the San Francisco skyline. "No bodyguards?" she asked with a smile. "No cameras?" "Just me," he replied, taking her hands. "That's all I ever want to be with you. Just me, not the CEO, not the worth heir, just Chase." "I like just Chase," Talia said softly. "He's a good man." Chase looked into her eyes. "These past weeks have been the most challenging and the most rewarding of my life. I've lost things I thought were important and gained things I never knew I needed." He knelt before her, not with a ring, but with a simple promise. "No legacy means anything if I can't build it with you," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I want to create something new, a life, a future that honors both our journeys." Talia's eyes filled with tears. "You sure about this? Your father will never accept us." Chase smiled, his hand reaching for hers. "I said never once before, but you made me believe in forever." Talia pulled him to his feet and into her arms. "Then, forever it is." 6 months later, Chase and Talia stood together on a beach in Hawaii, surrounded by a small group of loved ones. Dolores Reed watched proudly as her niece, radiant in a simple white dress, exchanged vows with the man who had changed for her, and because of her. Worth Innovations had grown rapidly, partnering with Marsh & Worth on initiatives that were transforming both companies. Talia's firm had expanded, focusing on helping companies create authentic diversity strategies rather than empty PR gestures. Harold Worth had not attended the wedding. He had retreated to his estate in Palm Springs, still bitter about what he saw as his son's betrayal, but Chase had sent him an invitation anyway, leaving the door open for reconciliation someday. As they shared their first dance as husband and wife, Chase held Talia close. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" she asked. "For walking into that boardroom and changing everything." Talia smiled up at him. "We changed each other, and now we're changing the world, one company at a time." Under the Hawaiian stars, they danced to their own rhythm. Two people who had found each other against all odds. Their journey hadn't been easy, and challenges still lay ahead, but they faced the future together. Their love a testament to the power of growth, forgiveness, and the courage to stand for what's right. In the end, Chase Worth had been wrong about one important thing. Marrying Talia Reed didn't just make sense for him, it was the only choice that ever really mattered.